Thank you. Hi. I want to talk about automated responsive website testing with Galen and Selenium in an AEM context. My name is Pegam. I've been with Provision since August 2008. I'm a backend and quality engineering developer and the current Galenium lead. I took the picture back there in case you recognize the background. We don't have much time. We want to be at lunch by 1 o'clock. So I will start at the very beginning with the history of Galenium at Provision. We started using Selenium in 2011. We started using Galen in 2013. And over time, it merged into Galenium, which we open sourced and published this year, very early this year, so it's over half a year old. There are many projects that we used it on. There's Volkswagen with their brand website and their digital business strategy, which was the car configurator and the dealer locator. There's Bentley with their Bentley.com and their car configurator. And there's AMG with their brand new brand site. In case you haven't seen it, go check it out. There are others I cannot discuss here. There are many developers who did many things. I just want to pick out one, Dirk, because he invented the name Galenium. I was on an extended holiday. When I came back, it had a name. There are many others. I'm not going to even try to name them all, not because of lunch, but because I might forget someone who's actually in the room. I'm going to present a challenge that Galenium is supposed to help us solve. The challenge is something that we all know, probably know someone who knows. There's a new version of a website. There can be development, content, update of the infrastructure. We need regression tests. Probably a couple, because we're going to find stuff. We expect to find things. We expect to fix them and do the regression test again. And we don't have enough resources. That means not enough people, not enough time, probably not enough of both. If we had 10,000 years and those million people, it's not a problem, but we don't. So let me introduce the players. There's a lot of players, and it's hard to make them act in a coordinated fashion. You already know some of them very well, like Java and Maven you probably met. TestNG is basically JUnit by another name. Selenium, as we already heard in other talks, drives UI test of websites with real browsers. And there's Galen, that you might not have heard too much about, and Galenium, that you probably haven't heard anything about. So I'm going to talk about those two. I'm going to start with Galen. This is not the main topic, just so you know what Galen is. It's basically an approach that wants to test layout. It's very front-end centric and uses constraints and tagging to describe websites and that different states that they can be in. So basically, we write specifications, and Galen will check that the website is actually doing it by using Selenium to drive the browsers. Go check out galenframework.com. They don't have a lot of documentation, but everything is in there. So it really makes sense to just go look at it. You'll get a very good idea of what they do. So not everybody has to dive into their laptops right now. I'm going to explain the basics a little bit. So what you do is you define some objects by either XPath or CSS. We use CSS exclusively. Then you write specifications on those objects, like this one should be this wide above this. And then you can use those specifications in suites, which are basically test cases. These are some examples of object definitions. Basically, you have a name and a CSS selector. So the specs use the names, and define these constraints, like content should be beneath the navigation, nav items should be inside the navigation and aligned with the logo. This is not a real case, this is just examples. There are a lot more features. I'm not going to talk about them. They're all on galenframework.com. And we're done with Galen. Not really, because Galen is part of Galenium. It makes up most of the first part of the name. The rest is probably from Selenium. I don't know. Ask Dirk. He came up with it. These are the technologies. You recognize them maybe from the player slide, except for extend reports, because it doesn't really move. I didn't put it in there. Galenium has a lot of parts, a lot of very interesting technical details that we don't have time because we're starting to get hungry. These are the parts I'm going to talk about, starting with the Galenium context. This is your context in every test case. The most important thing is thread safe, so as long as you use the context, you don't have to care. Whoever wants to run it can run it multi-threaded to speed stuff up, parallelize. You will always have all the things you need in your test case. If there's something you still need, you can put it in as custom values. You might have to do your own cleanup so it doesn't leak from one test case to the other, but it's really safe to use the Galenium context, and you don't have to come up with your own data structure. Differences. We want to find differences, but the unexpected ones. We already know a bunch of differences that are going to be there. Like if we check the title of the page, it will probably be different on every page. If we look at different elements, they're going to be different. So there's a bunch of expected differences that we might have. Like if it's a pageable component, the index is important. If you're looking at the paging itself, it might be important how many there are. If you have user stuff, users might be important. So this is an actual Java object that you can feed, and you can export as a file path or as a properties key. This will be important later because we're going to use it to store and retrieve our samples. I will give one example of the file path. So basically, I picked 3 expected differences. The browser, it's going to be a little bit different in browsers. The size, it really depends on whether you're looking at mobile or desktop, and the element. As some examples, like Firefox, kind of desktop-ish, looking at stage, it's going to be that path. If we take Chrome and a more mobile thing, look at stage, it's going to be that path. If we don't have the differences, we're just going to have one image, and we don't stand a chance. So this is how differences work. Sampling. This is where we actually load our web page. We take a picture or look at it in some other way, extract our value. We check if it agrees with the expected value. If it does, we're fine, we just move on. If we expected something else, then we need to do something. We remember what we actually saw, so we can do comparisons and maybe use that sample in a future run. Extend reports, just really quick. It's not well known, but it's specialized in test reporting. Has nice tagging. It's on Maven Central, and we integrated it with a simple logging facade. So basically, you just debug info, error, whatever into your logger. And Galenium will write it to your test case in the test report. OK. Very central concept coming up now. It's selectors. So basically, we get an element name, we get a CSS string. It's very, very similar to what we already seen, but this is called a selector in Galenium, a Galenium selector. So it's basically just an element in the CSS, and you can just get a by object from that, which is what Selenium uses to identify elements in the browser. Or you can get a locator, which is what Galen uses. So within Galenium, we will always use selectors whenever we hand off to the others. We're going to use as by or as locator. OK. We're moving towards the demo now. The Galenium process. As an input, we have the objects, which is basically our selectors or locators or whatever. We have the test cases, which are test-ng test cases written to interact with Selenium, or just Galen if you want, but that wouldn't give you much interaction. We have the Galen specs, which you can, in a Selenium context, kind of think of as a better assertion, because you're not writing, oh, the title is visible true or something, but you can have like really complicated constraints that you can just check with one line in Java. And your front-end guys can write them for you, so you don't even have to know what they do. And you get the sample data. Then you get the test, which is functional with Selenium. It's layout through Galen. And we have the sampling with the differences and the sampling process I just showed you. So as an output, we get Galen's reports. We get the extent report. We get test-ng reports, which are not very helpful, but test-ng can interact with failsafe and Surefire plugins to give you the test results in a form that your CI will understand, so you can get your nice graphs and statistics. And possibly new sample data. If something wasn't as expected, Galenium will know. OK. Save the sample data, so you can use them as input for your next run. And basically, that's what we're going to do in the demo. OK. I tried this a bunch of times. It should work. What I didn't think about was that sometimes the wireless is not so fast here. So we might have to wait for it to download the drivers. What I'm going to do first, this is not supposed to be up there. We didn't have that before. Let me try to fix. I'm very new to this. This is what you're supposed to see. Yeah. We're going to run the sampling now, which is basically, let me show you so you know what we're doing. This is basically just Maven clean install with a verify profile and tell it to ignore verifications, which basically just means keep on running no matter what happens, and save the samples. So we're going to run sampling. It starts the Maven clean. Now, this is the slow part. It's really fast usually, but because it's just downloading some small zips. The Gecko driver to drive, not like, what's that Gecko engine thing? Firefox, and the Chrome driver for Chrome. And we should see the first browser. In the back, you see some very verbose output. This is the WCM.io sample site. I used that, so the example has something that's out there and we can use. And so it's really AEM. I'm running it on an author. So we start a new browser. We have to log in. We look at the page, check a few things. We're checking the logo with image verification. We're checking in the mobile version that the navigation links aren't visible, and in the desktop version that the current page link is active and the other one isn't. And we're running those tests on the home page and the conference page. So basically, we have two browsers, two tests, and two sizes, so mobile, desktop, kind of. So this is like the minimum you can do to actually get the three most important dimensions. What we did now was look at everything and fail. These are this is the Galen report, and this is the extent report. see all the failure. I will show you the tagging. This is really nice because you can see everything failed. So now it's really boring. Imagine you have a lot of tags, more browsers, more sizes and stuff. So you can actually see like only Chrome and Conference page failed. So you already have a pretty good idea of what you're looking at. We can check out the Galen spec. And you can see we get a warning because it couldn't load an image. And maybe like here in the very end, you recognize the Chrome 400 logo PNG. That's used from, that came from the differences. So like now I copied all the samples over to my source folder. You shouldn't check in all those binary images into Git. We do sometimes. So now I'm running a verification. This one should work because I just used all the samples we just sampled. So basically in our challenge case, I didn't deploy a different version, so everything is going to just run fine and we're not going to see how we catch the regression. But basically what you did see was I used the old version of the website, just add some very simple test cases, run it on a bunch of URLs and sizes. Just remember everything I've seen that I want to look at, and then I can use that to verify. So this report should look much better soon. Are we already done? No. It's the same test case again, so but it doesn't work. If I use another one, the samples wouldn't work. So now it should be really, really happy. As soon as it's done, we will look at the report. I can tell you now that I'm happy with the results, but I'm not happy with the report. See, everything passed. It's so green. All the Galen tests are so green. You can the heat map is kind of nice. Now we only check the logo, but if you check multiple elements, it will like mark them with this little thing, so you can see what it actually checked and what worked out and did not. So what I'm not happy with is there's way too much stuff in here. I don't even know where the relevant information is. This is really nice when you're developing Galenium or running your local tests and trying to figure out why doesn't it work, but you don't want to have this on your CI. So what you can do is tell Galenium, do your thing, which it is doing right now. This is basically the same run we just did before. So it will use the samples. It will download the drivers again. I just couldn't make it stop. But the reporting will only start on info level. This is configurable. It's just like a logback configuration that I switch with a command line, or I switch to info level instead of trace, and I tell it to only remember Galen errors, because Galen will always make a screenshot for you of what it looked at, and that can take up a lot of space if you have a lot of specs. And you actually only want to see the cases that didn't go how you expect. So that makes a lot of sense for continuous integration. So as soon as this is done, we will see a much, much better report. It should also be green, but it should be kind of clear what checks it did and whether they worked. Wow, big success. Okay, now see all the verbosity and see this. This is what we did. We checked the URL, we checked the title, we checked the logo, we checked that the stage is there, we checked that the links are not there. All our tags are green. Yeah. And that's what you want on the CI. Not a lot of reporting, just quick information about the important things that happened. OK, that was the demo. I will be around for lunch. And I will be at the UI and testing part of the playground session this afternoon from 3:30 to 6 o'clock. So I want you to decide whether you have questions or want to have lunch. You can have lunch and ask me questions at lunch or come to the playground session. It's fine. If you have something that's more important than food, talk now.
Thank you, Andres. So So any questions you would raise right now? I'd love to raise. Nobody's actually eager to make it. Ah, there's one.
Ah. Someone had breakfast.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. Do you have best practices how to create and maintain those tests in a real-life project? You named some projects.
Well, one thing we did was have the front-end people write the Galen specs. And that's really good because they know what their selectors are, what their logical objects are, and they know what they're supposed to do, and they can run it against their front-end prototype. And then we can use that to check AEM. But it's more on a proof of concept level at this point. Everything is not very stable and very much still in development. We just put it out there, so maybe others can help us. But basically, the idea is that it's really cheap to make tests, get your sample data, and then do those regression tests. And that's already kind of the best practice. Just don't put too much effort into automation because you don't know how it's going to help you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?